Steve had a routine that he had to stick to rigidly every morning. If he didn't, it would take him at least 3 times as long to leave the house. He couldn't vary it in any way. He would only end up having to start all over again. It was time-consuming and frustrating, but the only way to appease the obsessive compulsion in his head that made him check everything thoroughly. Even when the routine was finished and he was locking the front door, the key had to be held in the lock as far to the right as it could go, for no less than 10 seconds. In the office he was fine, at least while there were other people around. That was another thing he found frustrating. In the presence of others, he didn't have a problem. He could switch off the computer, put away his files and lock the cupboard doors with nothing more than a cursory glance to check it was done. He couldn't understand what it was that made the house so different. What was it that made the routine kick in every time? It started with the bathroom. He checked the taps were off over the sink and bath, checked that the shower was switched off, made sure the window was shut and locked and the bathroom light switched off. He checked that the toilet seat was down and the edge of the toilet paper hung no less than an inch from the rest of the roll. It was all part of the routine. He had to go through with it. Next it was the bedroom. He pulled out the plug for the bedside lamp, touching the pins for any errant sparks. He made sure that the side windows were shut and locked, and then the thinner window that ran horizontally across the top of the frame. He checked that the main light was switched off and the duvet pulled over the pillows and then folded back on itself so that the pillows were just visible. He shut the bedroom door behind himself, then made sure all the other top floor doors were shut and the landing light switched off. By now, Chestnut had wandered upstairs and lay down on her side outside the bedroom. He stroked the top of her head and tickled her under the chin. She purred and rolled over onto her back, stretching herself out like a goalkeeper, reaching desperately for a shot aimed just beyond the reach of his fingertips. He rubbed her tummy gently and she purred even louder, the corners of her mouth turned upwards and her eyes shut tightly in contentment. He made his way downstairs to the living room and checked that all the sockets were safe and the patio door shut and locked, as well as all the windows. He made sure no DVDs or books had been left out and were all in their proper places on the shelves, and checked the lights were switched off. Finally, it was the kitchen's turn. The lights were dark, the electric socket switched off and all the plugs pulled out. The taps weren't running, the oven wasn't on, the gas rings on the hob were silent. The fridge door was closed and the windows and back door were shut and locked. He made sure that the light in the hall was dark, then picked up his briefcase for work and unlocked the front door. Outside he locked it again, holding the key in the lock as far to the right as it could go, for no less than 10 seconds. Only then was the routine complete. Similar routines had been part of his life for as long as he could remember, ever since he was old enough to be left alone in the house when his parents were at work. He couldn't remember a routine having to be quite as precise as this one, however. It only needed one step to be out of sequence for the whole thing to have to start all over again. No matter how much he tried telling himself that everything would be okay, it wasn't worth the guilt and worry that he knew would stick with him for hours afterwards. Today it would have to run smoothly. It would have to be perfect. Today was the day of his interview. He deserved this promotion. He'd worked hard for it. Okay, so maybe Mike could talk with more confidence and Jason organise his workload better, but at the end of the day, Steve was conscientious and thorough. There were times when both his colleagues had made sloppy mistakes that cost the company money. They couldn't say the same about Steve. He deserved this. All he needed was one morning when the routine ran smoothly. He woke up. He yawned and stretched. He opened his eyes. Something was wrong. He could tell immediately. Was it his imagination, or did it feel as if it was lighter outside than usual? He reached out lazily for the alarm clock and glanced at the time. He was half an hour late. "Oh no!" he shouted, throwing back the duvet and racing into the bathroom. Calm down, he tried to tell himself as he leapt under the shower and squeezed out twice the normal amount of shampoo into his palm. He started to rub it furiously into his scalp, wincing as some of it worked its way into his eyes. "Oh no!" he shouted again. "I don't believe this!" He placed his head under the jets of water. They trickled down between the strands of hair, rinsing them clean of lather. He pushed the hair back from his forehead and wiped his face and eyes until they opened again, even though he had to blink rapidly for a minute or two before the sting went away completely. Breakfast was a hurried bowl of cereal and a mug of coffee. His suit had been prepared the night before, and taking care of Chestnut's food, water and litter tray didn't take long. By the time he was ready to go, most of the half hour had been made up, and he was only running about 5 minutes late. "Right. Take a deep breath," he said. "Let's get this over with. Try not to think about it too much. You've done it plenty of times before." Bathroom, taps, sink, off, taps, bath, off, window shut and locked, light off, toilet seat is down, toilet roll is okay, check. Bedroom, plug out, pins fine, switch is off, side window shut and locked. Top window shut and locked, light off, duvet pulled over pillows and folded back, check. Bedroom door is shut, other doors on landing are shut, lights are off, check. Chestnut has now wandered upstairs. Stroke the top of her head and tickle her under the chin. She rolls over on her back and stretches. Head downstairs to check the living room. All plug sockets are safe. Patio door is shut and locked. Windows are shut and locked. DVDs and books are all on the shelves. Light is off. Check. Kitchen. Light is off. Plug sockets are safe. Taps are off. Oven is off. The gas rings on the hob are off. The fridge door is closed. The windows and back door are shut and locked. The light in the hall is off. Check. He'd done it. Possibly the quickest time ever. He put the key in the front door. He tried turning it to the right, the same as he'd done every morning since he bought the place. It didn't move. He couldn't twist the key to the right at all. "I didn't leave the front door unlocked last night, surely?" He tried turning the handle. It was stiff, as if the door was locked, but it couldn't be locked because he couldn't turn the key to unlock it. He tried turning it to the left, but it didn't move that way either. It was just stuck there, unable to move in either direction. What the hell's going on? He grabbed the handle and tried forcing it down. When that didn't work, he tried hitting it with the palm of his hand. Once, twice, 3 times. It didn't budge. He took the key out of the lock, reinserted it and tried turning it in both directions again. Nothing was working. The door stayed locked. He looked at his watch. He was losing time again. The seconds were ticking away and he couldn't get out of his house. "Not today, please! Any day but today!" He stamped back into the living room and started checking things that had already been checked. There was no reason why it would make any difference, but he was willing to try anything. Everything was the same as it had been before. He marched into the kitchen. Everything was okay there as well. He put the key in the lock again, tried turning the key, tried turning the handle. Neither of them moved. "Come on! Come on!" he shouted. He looked at his watch again. He was going to be late. This was ridiculous. He was going to lose out because his front door was broken. He raised a fist to punch the wall and stopped himself. It wouldn't solve anything, and only cause him more pain. He turned to run up the stairs and saw Chestnut staring down at him from the top, her head tilted slightly to one side. Steve didn't know how long she'd been there or whether she'd witnessed his predicament. She was a very intelligent cat, and always seemed to sense his moods with an eerie perceptiveness. To see her at the top of the stairs before he left the house was very unusual. She always fell asleep outside the bedroom door. It was all part of the routine. Each morning she came up to see him, and he stroked the top of her head and tickled her under the chin so that she purred and rolled over onto her back and stretched. Then he rubbed her tummy Oh. He started walking up the stairs towards her. I didn't stick to the routine. But it couldn't be the reason why. Could it? He reached the top of the stairs and held out his hand to her. She sniffed and rubbed the side of her head along the edge of his outstretched fingers. He rubbed both sides of her head gently under the ears. She started purring and padded silently after him when he made his way along the landing to the bedroom. He knelt beside her and stroked the top of her head, then tickled her under the chin. She was purring even louder now, and let him tickle her for a few seconds more before flopping over onto her back and stretching out in her usual goalkeeper pose. He stroked her tummy, paying more attention to her than usual, so that the purring increased in volume even more, and her pores opened and closed in rapid succession. When he finished and made his way back to the top of the stairs, he looked back and saw a very contented cat that had all but fallen asleep. He walked down the stairs and looked at the front door. It was broken. That was the only logical explanation for what was happening. But then, what about the routine? Did that follow logic? Was it logical that he always had to check things so often and in a certain order? Of course it wasn't. He sighed and put the key in the lock. He tried turning the key to the right. He heard a click as the key turned smoothly and pulled back the bolt that kept the door locked. He stared in disbelief at the handle that could now be pushed down and the door that swung open towards him. He stared at the front garden and his car and the road down the hill that led to work and his interview and the possibility of promotion. You don't have time to think about this. There's an explanation somewhere, but for now, just go. Go for the interview. Give it all you've got. Think about everything that's happened later. He grabbed his briefcase and stepped outside, pulling the door shut and locking it behind him. A moment later he was back. He slid the key into the lock and turned it as far to the right as it could go, holding it there for no less than 10 seconds.